When the letter came, I thought it was some kind of joke, because no one in their right mind could ever believe I owed $500,000 just for collecting rainwater. I stood there at my porch that overlooked my acres of green land, the small dam I had built at the edge of my property, glimmering in the sunlight, and the sound of water rushing softly down the stream always gave me peace. It was my sanctuary after years of city noise and false smiles. But the HOA never liked peace. They liked control, they liked rules that made no sense and fines that broke good people. The letter said I had violated Section 12, Paragraph 6 for unlawful hoarding of community water, whatever that meant. I called the number on the notice and got their president on the phone, Karen Chambers, the kind of woman who wore her sunglasses on cloudy days. Just to remind you she was better than you, she told me in her sharp tone, that my dam was preventing natural water flow into the neighborhood lake and that I was selfishly hoarding a resource that belonged to everyone else. I told her I built that dam on my land, with my money and my labor. It was a small pond, not Hoover Dam, but she just laughed and said the fine was final payable within 30 days or legal action would follow. I hung up, shaking with anger. I had lived in this community for 6 years, kept to myself, paid dues on time, never caused trouble. But that dam was my pride. My late wife helped me dig it years ago when she was still alive. She loved the water. The reflection, the peace it gave her losing her to cancer broke me. And that dam was the only piece of her I had left. So when they said I had to tear it down, I knew I couldn't just sit quietly. I drove around. That night, the whole neighborhood sleeping, while I stared at the quiet pond moonlight dancing on its surface. I thought about my wife and her soft voice saying, "Let nature heal what man destroys." And that's when the idea began forming in my mind. But before that, I tried reason. I went to the HOA meeting with documents, permits, receipts, even a letter from the county engineer showing the dam was safe and approved, but the board didn't care. Karen smirked through the entire meeting while the others nodded like puppets. She said the fine was now increased for defiance and added additional penalties for property modification without permission. I tried explaining, but they laughed and told me maybe next time I should read the rules before playing God with nature. I left that hall with everyone staring at me, whispering like I was some criminal. That's when I realized they wanted to make an example out of me. They wanted me broken. They didn't care about water. They cared about power. I spent nights sitting by the dam, watching the water rise after rain. Each droplet felt like a message from nature itself. I could hear frogs chirping, birds resting on the edges, life thriving peacefully, something those HOA people would never understand. I tried ignoring the hate letters that started showing up in my mailbox. Anonymous notes calling me selfish eco-terrorist and thief. One night someone even spray-painted "Thief of Nature" on my fence. That was my breaking point. I called the county sheriff, but he said it was a civil matter between me and the HOA. He couldn't do much. He told me to lawyer up, but I didn't have $500,000 or the stomach for lawyers. I remember one night a storm hit the valley, hard thunder shaking, the hills and the dam water rising higher than usual. I stood there under the rain, feeling the power of it all, when I noticed something at the far end of the embankment, flashlights moving. 2 men from the HOA, probably checking if I had tampered with anything. I yelled at them, but they ran off, slipping into the dark like rats. The next morning I found new signs near my gate declaring the dam condemned by HOA order. They didn't even wait for approval. They just printed their own signs and nailed them on my property like they owned it. That day I made my decision. If they wanted to fight nature, I was going to show them what real power looked like, not with violence, not with shouting, but with something far older and stronger than any HOA rule water. Before I acted, I spent a week preparing. I cleaned the dam's spillway, checked the old control valve, and made sure everything was safe, because I didn't want anyone hurt. I just wanted justice, real poetic justice. One evening I walked to the dam with my flashlight, the air thick and heavy after another storm. The pond was full, the moon glowing white over the water. I placed my hand on the cold metal wheel of the valve and whispered to my wife, "This one's for you." Then I turned it slowly. The sound of rushing water filled the valley like thunder. The pond began emptying into the creek that flowed straight into the neighborhood lake. Within an hour, Their artificial lake, which had been drying for months, began to rise again. Water gushing in fast. The same water they claimed I was hoarding was now flooding their manicured lawns. When I looked at the sky, the storm clouds were rolling in again, and the first drops started to fall. Nature herself had joined the fight. I stood there smiling, soaked under the rain, knowing this was just the beginning. By morning, the whole neighborhood was in chaos. Lawns, drowned flower beds, ripped apart sprinklers, useless under the new lake that stretched across the street. I stood at my porch, sipping coffee, pretending to read the paper as HOA trucks rushed in. Sirens flashing, men in yellow vests, shouting orders. They had no clue what happened. I could see Karen standing in her driveway, screaming into her phone, waving her hands at the water like she could command it to stop. It was poetic, her precious white heels sinking in the mud, her voice breaking as she yelled about insurance and property damage. The news spread fast, homeowners furious, demanding answers. Some blamed the HOA for poor drainage. Others said I had sabotaged the dam on purpose. But no one had proof. I kept quiet, because I knew nature had done the rest after I opened the valve. The rain took control. And when nature moves, no human rule can stop it. The local paper called it the Great Lakeview Flood. The irony didn't escape me. I had named my property Lakeview Ranch long before I even met these people, and now they were all living inside a lake of their own making. The next HOA meeting was chaos. People shouting at Karen, demanding to know why the HOA had declared my dam illegal without consulting engineers, and why fines were handed out without county oversight. Karen blamed everyone but herself. She said I had endangered the community and that criminal charges were coming. But then a man from the county stood up and read from a report stating that my dam had been fully compliant and that the HOA had overstepped their authority. The room went silent. Karen's face drained of color. I watched from the back corner, hidden under my hat. The man continued, explaining that the HOA had interfered with natural drainage patterns by forcing me to block water flow, resulting in the flood that destroyed their own infrastructure. Nature had done what I never could. It revealed their lies in front of everyone. Later, that night I drove around the neighborhood streets, still muddy lights flickering, some houses using pumps to clear basements. The same neighbors who once ignored me now looked at me differently, not with hate, but with quiet respect, maybe fear too. I didn't gloat, I just watched quietly. I never wanted destruction, only justice, and now the lesson was written across their lawns in water stains. Days later, I got a call from a local news reporter. She wanted to know if I had anything to say about the flood and the HOA fines. I told her the truth. I told her I had tried to warn them that nature can't be controlled by paperwork. She recorded every word, and that night the story aired on television, showing clips of me standing by my dam water, flowing calmly again, birds returning, trees glistening in the sun. The caption read, "Local man fined for hoarding water, becomes unexpected hero after saving valley from drought." By the next week, I received letters from people across the state thanking me for standing up to HOA tyranny. Some sent donations, some offered legal help. Even the county sent an apology letter for the misunderstanding, but the HOA wasn't done. They held another meeting this time, closed to non-members. They wanted to sue me for damages, claiming my actions led to millions in losses. But they didn't know I had prepared for this months ago. I had documented everything, every letter, every voicemail, every trespassing video, even their signs declaring condemnation without approval. I sent it all to my lawyer friend who loved a good fight. Within days, a countersuit was filed not just against the HOA, but against Karen personally for harassment, property damage, and emotional distress. And when the subpoenas arrived, the smug smiles vanished. Karen tried to play victim, saying I had plotted this from the start, that I was dangerous, but the evidence spoke for itself. Even her own board members turned on her, saying she pushed the fines too far for personal gain, I heard. She tried to resign, but it was too late. The county froze their accounts pending investigation. The funniest part was the same people who once accused me of hoarding water now came to my property asking how I built the dam and if I could help them design something similar to store rainwater. I didn't hold grudges. I even helped a few of them, explaining that nature rewards balance, not greed. I told them the dam was never about power. It was about respect for what we're given one afternoon. While working by the pond, I found something half buried in the mud. It was a gold bracelet. My wife's old charm bracelet that she lost years ago while we were building the dam. I held it in my hand and felt tears rise in my eyes. Maybe it was her. Sign telling me she was proud because I didn't break. I didn't let them erase her memory. I looked out at the peaceful water and whispered thank you. But the calm didn't last, because 2 weeks later I got another letter, this one. Not from the HOA, but from Karen's lawyer. It said she was suing me personally for defamation, claiming I destroyed her reputation and career. I laughed when I read it because by then, her name was already trending online as the woman who tried to find a widower. For collecting rainwater, public opinion had buried her deeper than any court could still. I knew this wasn't over. She was desperate, and desperate people can be dangerous. That night, as I sat on my porch watching the moon reflect off the pond, I heard a noise down by the dam. It was faint like footsteps in the mud. When I grabbed my flashlight and walked closer, I saw something move near the water, a figure bending down near the valve. My pulse quickened. It wasn't an animal. It was human. Someone trying to sabotage it, I yelled. But they ran into the dark, leaving footprints along the bank I followed until the trail vanished into the woods. Who do you think it was, the HOA's hired hand, or Karen herself? The next morning I woke up before dawn, fog hanging over the fields like a white blanket. The air still wet from the storm. I went down to the dam to check for damage. The ground was soft, muddy footprints, still visible from the night before. Someone had definitely been there. I followed them until they disappeared into the thick brush leading toward the service road. When I reached the edge, I saw something shiny on the ground, a broken piece of a gold bracelet. Not mine. It was new. Expensive. The kind of thing only Karen would wear. I smiled coldly because now I knew the truth. She couldn't let it go. Her pride, her image, her obsession with control. It had brought her here in the middle of the night, and I had a feeling she would come back again. That evening I set up an old trail camera by the dam, hidden behind the shrubs. I wanted proof, not revenge. Just truth, because truth was the only thing that really burns the guilty. I sat in my cabin, lights off, watching from the window. As the night grew darker, then around midnight headlights flashed across the dirt road. A white SUV stopped near the fence. Karen stepped out, wearing a raincoat, clutching a shovel and a flashlight. She looked around nervously, then walked towards the dam, her shoes sinking in the mud. She started digging near the valve, muttering to herself. I watched in silence, recording everything on my phone. The woman who had tried to destroy me was now destroying herself. When she tried prying open the control wheel, I stepped out, flashlight in hand. She froze, eyes wide like a deer in headlights. I said, "Funny, seeing you here, Karen." She stammered something about checking safety protocols. I told her the county already cleared everything, and that she was trespassing. She dropped the shovel and started walking back, but slipped, falling into the mud. I helped her up, not because she deserved it, but because I wasn't like her. She screamed at me, saying, "You ruined my life. You made everyone hate me." I said, "No, Karen. You did that yourself. You picked a fight with nature, and nature doesn't lose." She glared at me, eyes full of hate, then stormed off into the dark. The next day I sent the video footage to the county sheriff and local news within hours. It went viral. Headlines read, "HOA president caught vandalizing property of man. She fined for collecting rainwater." The community finally saw who she really was within a week. She resigned from her position, her house went up for sale, and I heard rumors that her husband left town too. The HOA board was dissolved under investigation for corruption. The same people who once fined me now apologized. Some even offered to rebuild the damaged areas around the lake, but I told them to leave it alone. Nature would take care of it in time. Months passed and the land healed. The water settled back into balance, fish returned, birds nested again. Wildflowers bloomed around the pond one evening. As the sun set behind the trees, I sat by the water listening. To the frogs singing, I could almost hear my wife's laughter in the wind. I took out her old photo from my wallet and smiled. The world finally felt right again. Then one morning, a black envelope arrived. No return address, just my name written in. Shaky handwriting inside was a small photograph taken at night showing me standing by the dam, flashlight in hand. The same night I caught Karen, only this photo was taken from across the pond. Someone else had been watching. I looked around the room, heart pounding because the angle wasn't from a camera I placed. It was from the other side where the woods begin. I went outside scanning the trees, wind rustling leaves, shadows dancing. But no one there. I stood quietly, the air still and calm, the pond perfectly still, except for one ripple spreading slowly from the center. Maybe it was nothing, maybe just nature, reminding me that peace never lasts forever. But as I turned to go back inside, I noticed something glinting in the dirt near the fence, another bracelet, broken silver this time, engraved with letters, HOA Property Control Division 7. I picked it up and smiled, because deep down I knew what it meant. The board might be gone, but their kind never really disappears. They hide, they wait, and someday they'll try again. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because now I understood something. No rule, no fine, no paper could ever control what was truly free. And as the wind blew across the valley carrying the scent of rain, I looked at the dam standing tall, strong and alive, and whispered to the sky, "Let nature handle the rest."